Good evening, everyone. This is Jeff Simons. I'm the Superintendent of Schools for the East Greenbush School District, and we are so grateful that you have joined us for our presentation and thoughts and concerns discussion regarding the school reopening plan. As the community is aware, we proposed a preliminary school reopening plan to our Board of Education last Wednesday evening. We have also offered opportunities both this evening and next Thursday evening for the community to participate in both an update on the plan as well as continued conversation as we prepare for the opening of school for our students, our faculty, and our community in September. I'm joined this evening for a panel discussion of all of the issues involved in school reopening and to help respond to your questions and concerns by a distinguished administrative team. I'll start with Mr. Harkin, who is our high school principal at Columbia High School. Thank Mr. Harkin for joining us. We have Mrs. Jill Barker, who is our principal of Goff Middle School. I want to thank Mrs. Barker for being with us. We have Molly McGrath, who is our Director of Pupil Personnel Services, who handles special education as well as oversees the nursing and health program. Mr. Wayne Grignon is our principal of Jenay Elementary School. Mr. Grignon is known as the former principal of Goff and also our principal at the elementary school of Citizen Jenay. Jack Alvey, Mr. Jack Alvey is the veteran principal from the Donald P. Sutherland Elementary School. And a person who needs no introduction is Mr. Jim McHugh, who is an assistant superintendent for curriculum instruction with our district. He has also been a principal, assistant principal, and a teacher with the district, having worked here for approximately 30 years, although he looks like he is about 30 years old. So I want to thank my administrative panel, not only for being here to help me respond to the issues that come up, but also we are joined by Mr. Mahar and Mrs. Squillaci, who will be our special guests. And if they have anything to add throughout this discussion, we welcome their comments as well. Mr. Mahar is the principal of Belltop, and Mrs. Squillaci is the principal at Red Mill and has been a longtime administrator with the district, having previously served as the Director of Pupil Personnel Services. So I'm going to take about 20 to 25 minutes to provide the community with an update regarding our school reopening planning. And if you give me just a second, I'm going to attempt to share my screen so that everyone can see it. I'm going to need Mr. Adam, who is the host, to enable me to share my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay, I'm hoping that everyone can still hear me, and we're about to begin the formal presentation. As the community is aware, we are in the process of planning for our school reopening. There are mixed emotions associated with school opening. We are excited to have our students and our faculty back in our schools. We are also very concerned that we reopen our schools safely and provide the best educational quality that we can to our students, given the constraints. We've worked with our team representing our administrators, our teachers, our parents, and our support staff to put together a reopening plan that provides for in-person return to school 2 days per week, kindergarten through 12th grade. In accordance with the state education department guidelines, we have to be prepared to shift at any moment to full remote learning, and of course, in response to the COVID-19 circumstances that may arise as we progress through the school year. So the state is requiring us to offer options for in-person instruction, remote instruction, and virtual live instruction is an important part of our our component plan. We additionally have opportunities that we are providing for our families to request that students receive full remote learning. And those opportunities are being reviewed right now with those requests and factored into our planning. The baseline and the fundamental value driving our proposal is to ensure that we have equity for all students, kindergarten through 12th grade. The current hybrid model proposed to the board and the community provides equity of in-person instruction, quality hybrid instruction, and virtual live instruction for our students. The schedule would look like this by way of review. We would be dividing our students into groupings to ensure that we can provide social distancing within our classrooms. We need to reduce the number of students within our classrooms at any given time. We'll be providing instruction that occurs on Monday for our Group A in person. That Group A would shift to remote instruction on Tuesday. The in-person instruction would provide support for the remote instruction. Well, I'm hearing that the screen is not being seen. I'm going to try this again. Okay, so as we described the hybrid plan, students are broken into groups. There will be in-person instruction and remote instruction. The in-person instruction that students receive during the day will support the remote instruction, and we will have all students in live virtual instruction on Wednesdays. We are reducing the class sizes within each of our available spaces by approximately 50%. It is not exactly 50%. However, in compliance with the health and safety guidance, we are enabling each desk to be located 6 feet apart from other desks and to ensure appropriate spacing in compliance with social distancing. We will be asking teachers on virtual live instruction days and all days for which instruction is being delivered to report to the schools. That will be different from the situation that we were in the spring. We will also be ensuring that to the best of our ability, within scheduling considerations, we can provide for family groupings so that children at each level who are from the same family could be assigned to the same AB day schedule. To give you an update on the timeline, we presented the preliminary reopening plan to our Board of Education on Wednesday, July 29th. We submitted our plan to the State Education Department on July 31st. We have yet to receive an announcement from the governor that the schools will reopen. We are awaiting that decision this week. We're here on August 5th participating in a virtual parent community input session. Additionally, we are planning another session like this on next Thursday evening, August 13th, to ensure that the community continues to receive updates on our planning. I will be making a final recommendation to our Board of Education on August 19th. And in accordance with the current school calendar, the first day of instruction is scheduled to begin September 8th. Districts, including East Greenbush, are considering moving the student start date to September 14th to provide more days of planning and training for our staffs to ensure that our safety and health procedures are implemented well, and to make sure that our teachers and our staff have time to make sure that they are fully prepared for what will be a different opening for our schools than what we're used to. That decision will be made by a final adoption of a revised school calendar on August 19th, and our school district calendar committee will be meeting to review some of the considerations involved in potentially changing our school start date for our students to September 14th. Other districts are considering similar changes to the school calendar. So as we presented the plan between last week and this week, we have been receiving emails and trying to respond as best as possible to those emails. We tried to capture some of the key concerns and questions among our community. The largest area of concern is the considerations involved in in-person learning, the number of in-person learning days for our kindergarten through 5th grade children. Parents are concerned about the impact and what support they may need for their children on remote learning days as they have to go to work. In some cases, report to work. In other cases, they'll be working from home. And a large concern within our parent population among the kindergarten through 5th graders is childcare. We did announce at our last meeting that we were working with Greenbush Childcare as well as the YMCA to identify places in the community that can provide healthy and safe childcare for a full day option. We are also making provisions to ensure that our before and after school care is still provided within our schools. And we are looking at our teaching assistant schedule to determine what types of support we might be able to provide at the child care locations to help our students with the remote learning projects and assignments. We've also heard concerns and questions. It was not clear to some of our families in the plan whether or not the district was offering a full remote option. We are. We have encouraged our parents to contact principals if they have any concerns related to their children returning to school in the fall. Principals have been receiving those concerns, and we will present some data this evening on, at this point, the number of children whose families have expressed an interest in a full remote learning option. Approximately 130 families have requested that option, kindergarten through 12th grade, as of today. Additionally, some health and safety questions have come up, which we plan to address in the presentation this evening. There were some questions and clarification regarding the guidelines and the rules for the wearing of face coverings and masks for both our students and our staff. And this week, based on some comments that were made by the Governor Cuomo, regarding COVID-19 testing and the school's responsibilities and the concerns of parents, we will talk about how the school would work with the Department of Health to handle any students or staff members who may have symptoms of COVID-19 and who may need to be required to be tested as part of the overall process to ensure that we are working with the Department of Health and ensuring that our students and staff are safe. The community has asked us to review the K-5 considerations involved in the plan providing 2 days of in-person learning. And so my administrative team is doing that. We've been working on that really since Thursday of last week through the board meeting in which we started to hear those concerns. I can tell you that the administrative team is still working on looking at options. I will be talking about what some of the considerations regarding those options are this evening. But the criteria that we continue to apply in looking at both the current proposed plan and any options that we might consider include, first and foremost, safety. We are obligated, not only obligated, but bound by responsibility to ensure that the New York State Department of Health and the New York State Department of Education guidelines, in particular regarding social distancing or physical distancing, is occurring in every space in our schools. We are also obligated to ensure that the enrollment within our schools at any time will enable the staff to safely manage the number of students that we have in our schools and to be able to implement all of the procedures that range from 6 feet between students as they enter into the building, 6 feet between students as they transition in the hallways, and 6 feet between students while they are in class. We will also be responsible for making sure that we can implement temperature checks and screenings of our students and our staff. And therefore, we really have to be cognizant of any changes and how they might impact health and safety in accordance with the state requirements. Space. Our administrators are doing a further space analysis. And I will talk about what that involves. The question that we're faced is, do we have sufficient classrooms to ensure that social distancing will occur, even if we increase the enrollment of the overall number of students that are in our schools, particularly at the K-5 level? Additionally, staffing is an important consideration. Do we have sufficient qualified staff to provide the educational program in compliance with all New York State Education Department requirements. Additionally, an important foundation of our plan is equity. Within the health and safety guidelines and constraints, are we able to provide quality education for all students at all levels, regardless of need and regardless of background? When we think about the criteria of safety, it is important for everybody to remember that we are reopening our schools under an extraordinary condition. We are still in a pandemic, and the return to school cannot be business as usual. There are many factors and many constraints involved in reopening the schools. We have a range of concerns among our parents. We have parents who are very concerned about their child returning to school safely. They have questions and concerns about the particulars of the procedures that we plan to follow. Additionally, we have concerns among our staff. We have considerations regarding ensuring that we can address those health and safety concerns, both of our families and of our staff, to make sure that we can provide education safely as we reopen. I can assure you that we will not increase the risk to children, staff, or families by putting more children in any individual classrooms. And in all cases, we will adhere to social or physical distancing. We also have to look at any potential for staff reassignments as we try to put more children at the kindergarten and fifth grade level into our schools to increase in-person learning. We have to make sure that we accommodate those students in ways that don't reassign people from critically important safety functions, such as the temperature checks, such as supervision of kids as they are entering into the school, such as greeting children on the buses, and such as supervising lunch, recess, and other important functions within the school. Our space considerations include making sure that the desks are 6 feet apart, no exceptions. I've asked the administrators of each of our respective schools to use the libraries, to use the music rooms, to use the art rooms, to use our computer rooms, and to even use our gyms and cafeterias when available. The implications of using the gym, for example, to set up 2 classrooms is we won't have an appropriate space for a full physical education program, and we will have to modify our physical education activities, those that can be done outdoors and those that can be done in either the classroom or the hallway, keeping in mind physical distancing. As we look at ways to address the concern at the K-5 level, we are taking out students from our enrollment who have already been assigned or are in the process of being assigned to a full remote instructional option. We are monitoring the impact of those students on the overall decline in enrollment in each of our grade levels and the overall enrollment within each of our schools to see if the number of students being assigned to remote instruction will give us opportunities to provide more space for students to attend each of our respective schools in person. We are also considering options that would be somewhat disruptive, but also could be done given the extraordinary circumstances that we are facing as we reopen our schools. We're considering moving grade levels out of the neighborhood schools. We've looked at, over the course of the last few days, what the impact, for example, of moving a grade 4 or a grade 5 to Goff Middle School would be, and we've determined that there is not sufficient space to move grade 4 or grade 5 or any of the elementary grades into the middle school without having to modify or move the 8th grade program. We've also looked at the potential to move the 8th grade program to the high school, and in doing so, we feel that there may not be sufficient space to offer in-person learning to our high school students, or to ensure that we can offer our students electives, advanced placement courses, college credit courses, and a full complement of high school courses as they prepare for college and career. And we are pursuing a lease arrangement for additional building space, and we are having conversations with Hudson Valley Community College and the New York State Office of Children and Family Services regarding potential use of either Hudson Valley or the New York State Office of Children and Family Services Training Center located here in East Greenbush on Columbia Turnpike. I mentioned that we are looking at the number of children who have requested remote instruction to date. We're encouraging our parents to request that or to let our principals know what their concerns are about students returning to school by Monday of next week. At this time, we can provide you with a breakdown by grade level and by building. We will be using this information to develop remote classes for those children and to accommodate any staff who are certified in areas where we will need a remote instructional class. We are also continuing to work with Questar BOCES to pool our resources to be able to provide this remote learning program for those families who requested a full remote option. Again, there are approximately a total number of students currently scheduled for full remote instruction of about 130 children, which represents about 3.3% of our overall enrollment. When we talk about equity, we want to make sure that our children, kindergarten through 12th grade, that their academic, their emotional, and their social needs can be met, and that we can provide educational quality for 4,000 students. And looking at the issues associated with creating more space in our elementary school, we are cognizant of the fact that as we impact a change at one level, it affects a change at another level. And it's important for everybody to understand that while we do the best we can to provide for every child, at the end of the day, we are one district, we are one community, and all of our students graduate from Columbia High School. So the issue of equity is critically important because children will be moving through the system, whether it be elementary, middle school, and high school, and we want to provide them the best education that we can as a whole. We want quality instruction, whether students are engaged in in-person learning, hybrid learning, or full remote. To be able to offer those three options requires important staffing considerations. We are also receiving requests from staff who are requiring remote options or requesting remote options. We have to be able to staff our district in ways that can provide both in-person learning and full remote options, as well as full remote options and other blended models for our teaching staff. And that is an important consideration in determining whether or not we can provide more in-person learning to our children at the elementary school level. And Mr. Goodwin, our Director of Technology, is ordering the technology that is needed to ensure that kids can access the remote learning program. As we move through various considerations, we're looking at whether we can provide a different model of instruction at the kindergarten through 5th grade level and still meet core area requirements and such specials as art, music, library, special education, and related services. We have to deploy our teachers in ways that comply with New York State Education Department regulations, including academic intervention services. A number of schools that have been able to provide in-person learning are utilizing AIS teachers and teaching assistants. We are looking at how we might do that, but still stay in compliance with the regulations. As students move from one grade level to the next, or as we consider moving complete grade levels out of schools, we have to consider the capacity of the building and the impact on students, program space, and the master schedule and staffing assignments within each of our respective buildings. Assuming that we find space and we are able to locate all of our kindergarten through 5th grade students who need in-person learning, we need to ensure that we have sufficient staff to do that. And then we have to calculate the cost of those staff members. And it's important to remember that we are still in a situation in our public schools in New York State that we could be experiencing a 10 to 20% cut in our state aid. If that were to occur, we would consider that a financial emergency for the district, and we may not have as many options as we're presenting now in our current hybrid plan. Can we assign people in ways that are safe? When we assign more students to a building, we are also in need of assigning more staff to the building. Will physical distancing become more challenging? We've looked at moving, as I said, a grade level out of the neighborhood schools. We looked at potentially moving 5th grade to Goff. We did a space analysis and a staff analysis to determine that it would not work very well. And in fact, the 8th graders would have to be moved out of Goff Middle School We've examined what the impact of moving the 8th graders to the high school would be. Because of the scheduling of classes, we have both teachers that teach both 7th grade and 8th grade within their schedule. We could potentially move teachers to the high school in ways that would teach the core courses, but we would have difficulties with the encore courses, special area courses, as well as special education and the middle school alternative program. Additionally, we would be reducing in-person learning for grades 9 through 12 in ways that would not be able to, we would not be able to offer all of the complement of courses that we offer right now. And it would likely result in a number of significant staff reassignments, both by level, for example, from the middle school level to the high school level, and by courses. We want teachers who are experienced, for example, in teaching calculus, to be assigned to teach calculus. We want teachers who are experienced in particular levels to be able to be assigned to the level that they can be, to the best of our options that are available. Okay. We've looked at the potential to move a complete grade level out of a school to provide sufficient space, and we are still looking at that. We don't know how the community and our parents would feel about that. We have talked about the potential for 4th grade or 5th grade. 4th grade actually has more students, so the movement of 4th grade out of a building would actually free up more space in each of our respective 5 elementary schools to be able to accommodate some of the space considerations. Again, I mentioned that we were looking at this. We haven't made this determination yet. We are having discussions with Hudson Valley and the Office of Children and Family Services. In order to do this, we need approximately 25 classroom spaces, plus some smaller spaces, to be able to accommodate programs such as speech and language, occupational therapy, social workers, counselors, and physical therapy, and other small group instructional spaces. In order to use a building outside of the school district that is not licensed and approved by the State Education Department, we have to have that building reviewed and licensed and approved by the State Education Department. That would include a safety and security review, looking at areas such as the bus drop-off. We would require a certificate of occupancy from the New York State Education Department, and we would have to ensure that the fire and smoke alarm system and the asbestos compliance regulations are similar to what would be provided in a school. And we have already started that process by notifying our project manager at the New York State Education Department that we are considering a lease of space. We could change the Wednesday virtual instruction day to be in person for our children at the K-5 level. That would result in a change from the current proposed ABABA to, actually from the current schedule to an ABABA, where students would receive an additional day of in-person instruction every 2 weeks. That would be an option that would increase in-person learning for our children at that level. However, it could provide a confusing schedule to our families. It would also require a 6-day cycle for special areas in physical education, music, art, and library, so we ensure that students, when they are attending school in person, would receive PE, music, art, and library on a rotation day schedule. Additionally, if we schedule a change at the elementary school level and we remain with the current 6 through 12 hybrid model, we would not be able to guarantee that family groupings in all cases, including siblings at the elementary school level, middle school level, and high school level, could be assigned to the same schedule. There have been some questions that have come up this week regarding masks. I reviewed the language of our plan, and we are having discussions of the mask requirements. You will note in the plan that it indicates that the students and staff will be wearing masks while on school buses and inside schools, and they will be able to take them off while eating or drinking and during short breaks. We are meeting at the elementary level, middle school, and high school to define the duration of those breaks so that we are consistent in every classroom and school. And I would note that the inclusion of the word "and" at the discretion of the teacher for instruction, I believe, was a typo. So I will be recommending that we omit that word. So it will be breaks only in the classroom, defined by the appropriate developmental level, which will range differently from the elementary level to the middle school level to the high school level. And we have not yet made those full determinations, and we're having a discussion at the elementary level about what the parameters would be for the students to wear their face coverings while at recess, and we're having discussions of that. Additionally, the governor made a statement in one of his press conferences this week that was confusing for the school districts, as well as raised a lot of questions on the part of the parents regarding the school's responsibility for COVID-19 testing. I'm providing you with a clarification statement that came from the Department of Education today that basically indicates that our plan to consult with the Department of Health regarding the procedures that we need to follow, including testing of students and staff who may be indicating symptoms of COVID-19, that is done by the district in coordination with the health department. So the district does not operate a testing program for COVID-19. We consult with the health department, and the health department will tell us what protocols to follow. Additionally, we are continuing to pursue the childcare options that we talked about. I'm working with GCC on the approval of St. Mary's as a site within our community. Additionally, we are again encouraging families who may have concerns about their children returning to in-person learning to contact their student's principal to discuss the concerns. We would like to have that information by Monday, August 10th, as we finalize our lists for full remote instruction. Our next steps will continue to monitor the feedback we receive from parents. We will continue to do our analysis regarding the spacing and explore community-based locations where feasible. Additionally, I will update you at the next virtual session on August 13th at 6:30, and I will provide a full report to the Board of Education, including any financial costs or changes, to make a final recommendation to the board by August 19th. We need to be prepared. Our families need to be prepared in the event that we cannot change the current plan. Our school staff and our administrative staff need to be prepared to iron out the implementation concerns of our staff and to make sure that we have all of the procedures in place. So August 19th will be the drop dead date for any potential changes in the plan. At this point, I'm going to call on Mr. Adam, who is our Public Information Officer, to engage us in thought exchange. Mr. Adam, take over.
Thank you, Jeff. Could you just make me the host at this point? Thank you. All right, I will share my screen. All right, can everyone see the thought exchange information with the purple bar there? Give me a thumbs up if you see it. All right, thank you. All right, so as Mr. Simons said, we're going to be using our crowdsourcing platform called Thought Exchange to gather your input on our preliminary reopening plan. We've set aside 4 questions to bring to our stakeholders tonight and then back to the panel for some discussion. You can see the first one here. To join the Thought Exchange, you'll just type in tejoin.com, and then you will enter that 9-digit code. And the question is, what are your thoughts, questions, and concerns about the currently proposed hybrid model for the elementary level? In our second question, we'll be touching on the middle school and high school levels. So this is specifically for K-5. And I'm going to also put the link in this chat room on YouTube. So you should see there the link that you can click on, and then you'll just enter the 9-digit code. I'll leave this screen up here for a minute so everybody can join. When you do that, you can start to enter your thoughts or questions or concerns. Please note, for this first thought exchange question, there's a couple survey questions related to childcare. So you'll want to answer those, and then you can answer your questions or concerns.
We currently have approximately 400 people on the live stream, so we're encouraging as many of the 400 that want to participate in the thought exchange to do so. We may not be able to respond to all of the thoughts and concerns, but we will be able to note those concerns and respond through our frequently asked questions document.
So once you've posed a question or you've expressed a concern, you'll move on to the second step and rate other people's questions or concerns or thoughts. And this way we can have the highest rated thoughts come to the top and things that are most relevant to our audience, and we can bring that to our panel for discussion. If you need to join, just again, it's tejoin.com and then enter this 9-digit code. You'll answer a couple survey questions for this first thought exchange, and then you can ask a question or express a concern, and then move on to the second step where you can rate other people's thoughts. Try and rate 5, 10, 15 other people's thoughts, and try to use a variance of 1 to 5 so that we get a good reflection of what's really top of mind for people. So I'm gonna just bring this down since we've had some time to ask some questions. We'll set the timer. And then in another minute, we can see what's really top of mind for our audience and bring that to our panel. All right, our time is up now, so we'll move to the next slide here. One of the highest rated comments here. What happens if and when someone tests positive in a school? Does the school close down? 14-day quarantine for all. Mr. Simons? Mr. Simons, you're still muted.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Adam. What happens if if someone tests positive, does the school automatically close down, and is there a 14-day quarantine? Not necessarily. Superintendents from the Questar, BOCES districts meet with the Department of Health weekly. We've been doing that since March. We had a discussion today regarding procedures. There is not an automatic closure of the school. The immediate steps the school would take would be to send the child home or the staff member home who's indicating symptoms. We would take our direction from the Department of Health. That direction could include contact tracing, involving the number of children or staff members that were in a particular classroom or particular area. And then we would take direction from the Department of Health as to whether or not that class needed to be closed down and shift to full remote, or whether an area of a building. It will all be driven by the Department of Health and the contact tracing procedures put in place. I would also say that the district is hiring a COVID-19 coordinator to assist our nurses and our district administration as a liaison to help guide those processes and to make sure that the communication to our affected students, staff members, and families is as timely and as succinct and fluid as possible. But there is no automatic quarantine rule or shutdown rule. We take our guidance from the Department of Health.
All right. Next question. On remote days, how many hours will my child be expected to be in front of a computer?
That will vary depending on the level of the child. At the elementary level, we would not anticipate children sitting at the computer screen for a full day, for example, a 6.5-hour day. There'll be a variety of different types of engagement. At the high school level on remote days, the amount of time would be dependent upon the nature of the teaching assignments that the teachers gave when the students were attending in-person learning. I'm going to ask Mr. McHugh if he wants to elaborate a little bit more in response to this question. Mr. McHugh, our Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction.
I think that question can get a little confusing. So there's a little difference between remote days and our Wednesday that's live virtual instruction. So I'll address the Wednesday first. So the Wednesday live virtual instruction is different by grade level. We definitely don't want our to approach this with the sit and get kind of mentality where students are sitting in front of the computer and just getting information on Wednesdays. Our 6 through 12, we want our teachers to follow their instructional schedule, and we want our students to follow their schedule. So a typical high school class ranges between 38 and 39 minutes. There may be some days where those instructional periods are adjusted, that they don't have to run the entire 38 or 39 minutes. But our K-5 is a little different. We're working to develop some consistency. So the same expectations are district-wide for kindergartners through 5th grade. We know that the attention span is typically equivalent to 1 minute for each year of age. So a typical kindergartner, you're looking at 5-minute chunks. So we need to be creative, and it's unreasonable to think that a student's going to log on a Wednesday at 9 o'clock and stay logged on through 3:30. So it's going to look a little different. You know, things such as guided practice, cooperative learning groups, independent practice, differentiating, and teachers using that time to do some virtual assessments or to group students based on academic need. But teachers understand how students learn. They've always had the autonomy to design their lesson and implement and assess students as they see fit. And nothing changes with that in regards to Wednesdays. But the answer for 612 is that typically our students would be required to follow their regular schedule, and teachers would also be teaching that regular schedule, which is 5 instructional periods that range between 38 and 39 minutes. What's a little different is when we talk about remote instruction, so a student that may be an A-day student, meaning that they're in person on Mondays and they're in-person instruction on Thursday, and they're remote on Tuesday and Friday. Remote doesn't necessarily mean that there's some sort of technology involved. There could be technology involved, but it's not necessarily required. So that's a little different. No matter if a teacher's been teaching 10 years, 5 years, or 30 years, it's going to be like their first year again. They really need to rethink and design their lessons a little differently to maximize that in-person instruction time, so that when a student leaves, if they're in person on Monday and they leave, it's almost the I do, we do, you do structure of a lesson. A student would leave school on that Monday having that in-person time and have some follow-up type of learning experience to do on Tuesday. So, it's always been the same thing. Learning is a shared responsibility. The students, have some responsibility in that as well. But the teacher would design a lesson in the way that when that student left to go home on a Monday, they would have the supplies, the materials, and the things that they needed to do on Tuesday. We're looking at those higher order higher level learning skills, the application. So they've learned some skills, they've acquired some knowledge. Now they're applying it on Tuesday while they're remote. The Wednesday could be a time where we can check in and monitor that progress, maybe offer some additional support, and then they're back in person again on Thursday.
Thank you, Mr. McHugh.
You're welcome.
All right. Got a question here about social distancing. What procedures, I guess, would be in place to ensure social distancing? This person is expressing some concern about that.
Okay, I think those concerns might vary depending on the level of the child. So I'm going to kick this one to Jack Alvey, principal at DPS, to talk about some of the ways that the elementary staff will train the children to socially distance, some of the visual cues, some of the other things we're doing to the facility.
And you said the key word, Jeff, is training. You know, I think we all know school is going to look different this year. And, you know, for our kids who are returning, you know, from our first to our fifth graders, you know, our kids are going to have to reacclimate, and they're going to have to relearn some new routines that we're all going to have to be diligent with. And the key is going to be just having that explicit time to work through what social distancing is. What does that mean? Our school district, actually, Mr. Grignon put in a large purchase order where we're going to be marking the hallways, where everything will be separated 6 feet apart. We'll be doing the same on the interior as well as the exterior, you know, as kids are getting off the buses, transitioning through the hallways. It's going to take time. It's going to take practice. It's just going to be a new normal. A big part of our school year, no matter what we look like, you know, we're doing a lot of those management pieces at the beginning of a school year. This is going to be this will be a new piece to that management.
Mr. Alvey, it's Molly McGrath. If I could just chime in, I would like to give a positive shout out to our in-person summer school, who's already started some of this practices, and they've done an excellent job. All the students and staff have really mastered the social distancing. They were quite resilient to the changes.
Thanks for sharing, Molly.
All right, our next question. Why wait until kids reach school for temperature check? Wouldn't checking before getting on the bus be better?
Different from summer school, the number of buses that we have to run is significantly more. The summer school program, we were able to provide a staff member on every bus to step off the bus and do the temperature checking before the children got on the bus. We don't have sufficient staff to be able to ride those buses during a regular school year and to be able to ensure that we can respond to a situation at the bus stop when a child may have a temperature and need to be accompanied to an adult, a parent, as the bus needs to move on and bring the rest of the kids to school. So the requirement indicates that schools are responsible for ensuring that parents do the health screening and the temperature checks prior to children coming to school. As an additional safety net, we are staffing our buildings with teaching assistants and other staff when the kids arrive to do the temperature checks as the kids arrive in school. We're also providing a screening tool that will be available on the district's website, but we are unable to staff all of our buses to do temperature checks when the kids, before the kids get on, and to do it safely.
All right, Mr. Simons, we do have the 3 other thought exchanges to get to. Do you want to do 1 or maybe 2 more questions in this round?
Yeah, I'd like to pick one that we can direct towards our middle school and our high school.
Okay. We have one here on sort of discussing the K-5 and 6-12 models. And they said, I don't think you can apply the same model to K-12. There's a big difference in the ability of an older child to learn remotely than a kindergartner. So perhaps we could have a discussion on these models and the thinking behind them.
The model itself is not being applied the same way to elementary school kids as it is to high school kids. although the number of in-person instructional days is the same, the model will vary by level. And as Mr. McHugh had elaborated, the techniques, the teaching strategies, and the level of engagement will vary by level. Additionally, we know from the experience of the spring, from March 13th through June 15th, that many of our middle school and high school students not only struggled academically, struggled emotionally and socially by not being able to come to school. And we're entering into an unknown situation where there is the potential for our district to have to shift to remote learning. So I honestly disagree with the premise that our middle school and our high school kids will be just fine in full remote learning. In fact, many of our middle school kids and our high school kids presented some of the greatest needs and concerns when we were in full remote learning. I'll ask Mrs. Barker and Mr. Harkin to talk about some of the experiences and some of the considerations of our middle school and high school kids as we try to provide in-person learning for those age levels as well. Mrs. Barker?
Thank you, Mr. Simons. You said it very well. We had a variety of students share their experiences with us in grades 6 through 12. Some of the students were very independent and able to really take hold of remote learning and do very well with it. But feedback from teachers in general, the feedback was our special education students struggle about having the in-person instruction and the hands-on and the differentiation that you would get having in-person instruction. But in addition to that, even our accelerated students and our students who do very well in school struggle with the remote learning piece in that they also needed that in-person instruction to have critical thinking opportunities and discussions about learning. And they also, from a social and emotional perspective, middle school is a very, very important time for kids to be learning social skills. And there's a lot of social emotional development that takes place from 6th grade to 8th grade. I think research shows it's probably the most opportunity for kids to really gain those skills. So not being able to provide in-person instruction to this age population would really be detrimental. So it's extremely important that middle school students get that opportunity to have the opportunity to be with their teachers, see their teachers, for a variety of reasons, similar to the reasons that were stated for K-5 kids needing to be in-person instruction and having that opportunity.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Barker. Mr. Harkin, can you talk a little bit about the impact of in-person learning and the needs of high school students for returning to Columbia?
Sure. It's important that we get the high school students back in the building to re-engage them. They left in March, and it was a difficult time. Spring is usually a time of celebration of your senior year and celebrating your friends and finishing a year. And we lost a lot of engagement. We had a lot of home visits. We had a lot of students that missed the interaction daily with their teachers. We had some mental health issues that we struggled with. I think our social workers, our counselors, and our principals made more home visits in the last 3 months of the school year than we did in the first 7. So we were really excited to be able to get the kids back in the building, to preset them, let them know what our expectations are this year for both learning and how we're going to move forward in this new age. Like Mr. Alvey mentioned, this will be a new school year for us, but we need to preset the kids and see the kids and let them know what the expectations will be for this school year.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. Mr. Adam, let's move on to a new thought exchange.
All right, let me go back here. All right. Okay, so the next one. Please bear with me. All right, this next one is, what are your thoughts, questions, and concerns about the currently proposed hybrid model for students at the middle school and high school levels? Again, you'll go to tejoin.com and then enter this code, and then you'll be able to pose your questions or express some concerns for our panel. And I will set a timer here for 2 minutes. I also just added the link in the chat room of YouTube. Again, it's at tejoin.com and then this 9-digit code. Please remember, once you ask a question, you can move on to the second step and start rating other people's questions and comments. And you'll still have that ability once this timer gets down to 0 and we move on. You'll still have an opportunity to ask those questions and rate other people's thoughts. All right, so let's get into some questions here. I saw a few along the same lines about moving around the building. So let me try and find that. Okay. It's not the one. All right, will students change classes or will teachers go to different classes? And to build on that, we had some other questions about moving about the schools at the middle school and high school level.
I'm going to make a general comment that we are putting together the schedules currently of the A/B days for students at the middle school and the high school level. We are giving consideration to limiting the movement of the students as best we can, but also be able to offer a full schedule of classes. Some districts are forced by scheduling considerations and some of the social distancing requirements to limit the high school schedule, for example, to just core classes. We're trying to schedule in as many classes as we can and try to schedule kids in a way that reduces their movement. In all cases, we can't do that without students changing room to room. But we're trying to limit the directions which they change and which they travel for the contact tracing purposes, and we're putting together procedures for the cleaning of the classrooms when groups change. And we don't fully have those all ironed out, but once we do, we will tell you what they are. Mr. Harkin, at the high school, what considerations are involved in terms of tracking students and managing students in the event that they have to move from classroom to classroom? We can't limit them.
So we plan to stagger our releases in between periods, allow each grade level to leave about 30 seconds in between each other. We're going to use the second floor to go from north to south and the first floor to go from south to north, so the kids will not be passing face to face on the main levels of the hallway. We're anticipating having lunch 6 feet apart, everyone facing in the same direction so they can remove their mask and eat their lunch and not have to fear having food or particles spit towards them. So we've taken that into consideration, and it'll be, again, another process that we'll be continuing to add to different levels to make sure that we have the safest possible return.
Mrs. Barker, middle school considerations regarding the scheduling of students to reduce the amount of movement within the school and the mixing of the students?
Well, fortunately, in middle school, we do have grade levels in each wing, so we're able to isolate, for the most part, our 6th and 7th and 8th graders, and there's very little cross movement between those grade levels. We are going to be putting arrows on our hallway floors and our stairwells so that we have only one directional flow of traffic like you'd see in a supermarket, so we can avoid having students cross each other's pathways as much as possible. But like Mr. Harkin has stated, we are also looking at staggered release times, where we would be releasing kids at different times so there'd be less amount of students in the hallways. And in light of the fact that we have half of our student population in the building, we won't have the typical congestion that we would have in a typical school year. We are also in the cafeteria, we are doing away with our round tables in that they are not 6 feet round. So we are going to large 12-foot tables, and we are social distancing our students at lunch. And we're making sure that each of the students are 6 feet apart while eating lunch. And teachers obviously will have time at the beginning of the school year to establish what their procedures will be for entry and exit into their classrooms and exiting out of their classroom, and sanitation procedures. So certainly we are going to have some time at the beginning of the year to ensure that each and every one of our students are, we're reducing the amount of time that they pass one another, but at the same time trying to minimize their movement in the school as much as possible.
Thank you, Mrs. Barker. Mr. Adam, let's do another question.
All right, we had a few questions about grading. Will it be pass, fail? How are we going to be doing assessments and grading?
That sounds like a perfect question for Mr. McHugh.
So, like all schools, we learned quite a bit from the spring, and we know that, once the grading policy was changed in the spring, students became less engaged. So part of this plan is to increase accountability for all stakeholders, and all of our current grading policies and practices will be in full effect. So required to take attendance, on Wednesday virtual days, our 6 through 12 students are expected to log in and participate as scheduled, and they're held accountable. So it's a shared accountability, shared responsibility, and all of our current grading policies that are posted on our webpage in our policy book will be in full effect for the school year.
Okay, thank you, Mr. McHugh.
We had a few about cleaning. Cleaning between classes. Who will be responsible for cleaning classroom in between groups of kids? Is it the teachers? And at the high school, how will this be worked into the day?
We're still working through those procedures, and we will announce them as soon as they are finalized. Part of the process is we are trying to increase our custodial maintenance staff by utilizing substitutes. We are looking at the shifts of our custodial staff. We are ordering equipment such as the misters and the generators to mix the solution that disinfects the classrooms. We are ordering the wipes and the materials necessary to clean those desks, and then we will put together a procedure. We don't have that procedure finalized as of yet, but it's one of the issues that we're discussing within our administrative team and our schools, and as soon as we know that, we will release that procedure to the public.
How will special classes, music, gym, art change this year?
Okay, there are considerations regarding these subject areas that are dependent upon whether or not we stay with the current hybrid model or proposed, or we make any changes. We are looking at the staffing and how that staffing would be scheduled at various levels, elementary, middle, and high school. I'm going to ask Mr. Grignon, I don't think we've had Mr. Grignon in this meeting yet, to talk about some of the considerations regarding special scheduling at the elementary school level in light of the current AB virtual live instruction hybrid model that we proposed.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Simons. What we've looked at as a K-5 team has been looking to make sure there's equity amongst all students across the day. So therefore, the special schedule would not only dictate that certain kids would get certain specials on a given day. So the schedule that we've discussed as a K-5 team looks at a rotational basis for a 10-week cycle, 5 weeks for an A week, and 5 weeks for B. So that way, the special schedule, like if it started on a Monday, kids would follow their Monday schedule for specials and then would rotate through the 5 days of the week, and then would pick up with on the following week, instead of it being a Monday, it'd start with a Tuesday schedule. So that way the kids that were on remote instruction on Wednesdays, it would be able to be equitably distributed between all kids. So they would see all of their special area teachers based on the current AB model.
Thank you, Mr. Grignon.
Yep.
Let's quickly go to middle school and high school for specials areas. Some of these issues are being mapped out as we speak, but Mrs. Barker, can you make some general comments about some of the issues involved in scheduling specials? We can talk a little bit about music in particular with band and chorus and some of the different rules that we have to follow regarding social distancing in those particular areas, performance areas.
Well, we actually had some conversation with with a band teacher today to talk about what band and chorus and orchestra would look like at the middle school. And as you said, Mr. Simons, we are still working out the particulars on that. In that, obviously, playing instruments with a large group of students is not following CDC guidelines. So we are still in the process of figuring out what that's going to look like. I mean, we obviously want our students to be able to partake in art, music, in orchestra and chorus, if at all possible. But we don't have the specifics completely laid out yet because it did involve some scheduling changes in order to meet CDC guidelines and also to be able to figure out classrooms and where we're going to put these classes. So unfortunately, I'm not able to give you a whole lot of specifics on this, and that we are still in midst of some major discussions on what this is going to look like. But as soon as we do some of the things we talked about today to see if they work, then we'll be able to share more information with you.
I would also add that one of the considerations regarding special areas is we have to, if we want to offer those programs in person to the best of our ability, we have to have sufficient space. For example, the gym is needed for physical education. If we have to transition those spaces to classrooms, then the physical education program becomes more of either an outdoor option or a paper and pencil option or limited exercises and physical activities that you can do in the context of a much smaller space. Mr. Harkin, any comments on PE or music at your level?
Yes, we're working through the process as well. The CDC guidelines, unfortunately, is at 12-foot space, so it doubles from the 6 foot if you're going to do any wind instruments or any physical activity. So it is making it a little bit more difficult. So we're looking at the spaces, and a lot like we're doing what Jill's doing at the middle school and we're talking about the district is, we're looking at the alternative options. We know when we first come back, we can go outside as much as possible, but we're going to work to try to find some large group areas that we can socially distance kids and then allow for some individual lessons with that 12-foot spacing. So it's 12 feet on all sides. So you're looking at a 144 square foot area for one child to play an instrument. So it does make it difficult.
Thank you, Mr. Harkin. That's a nice example. Mr. Adam.
So I think we should do one more question in this round and then start another thought exchange. Will parents be required to produce a negative COVID-19 test result each time their child is sent home due to symptoms associated with coronavirus?
That'll be a decision that is made in consultation with your primary care provider and the Department of Health. The Department of Health will be contacted by the district if a child is sent home with a suspected case of COVID-19. The Department of Health will reach out to the family to determine what is occurring regarding the testing and an appointment, and then they will tell us what the protocol to return to school will be. So whether or not that would be a requirement to produce negative test result or a negative test result as reviewed by the Department of Health, or a clearance to return back to school directly from the Department of Health to the district, those are determinations that would be made and communicated to the district by the Department of Health, the Rensselaer County Department of Health.
All right, let's go to our third thought exchange.
Mr. Adam, while you're doing that, if I could comment a little bit further on some of the procedures. The Department of Health is organizing a meeting towards the end of this month with all of the school nurses and medical directors to make sure that everybody within our district and our region is on the same page regarding those procedures. And it'll be very clear what our nurses' obligations are, what our administrators' obligations are, and what the Department of Health will provide throughout the process. But that meeting has been arranged and will be coordinated among all the districts in Rensselaer County.
All right, our next thought exchange question. In the event that a grade level of students was moved out of each elementary school to a separate location within the community to increase in-person learning for K-5 students to 5 days per week, what questions and concerns would arise? And this speaks to Mr. Simons in your presentation discussing the options that are being looked at to move K-5, if at all possible, to full-time in person. So again, you'll go to tejoin.com and then you'll enter this 9-digit code. I'm going to add it to the group chat. And since we're short on time, we're going to set it at 1:30 seconds. Of course, get your thoughts in. Once you do that, please rate other people's comments and questions. You'll still be able to ask your questions after the timer goes off, but we do want to keep this moving. We have this question now, and we have one more thought exchange, which is related to health and safety procedures regarding reopening. That'll be next. All right, keep the questions coming. We'll move on to our panel here. I guess we'll start here with when will this be decided by, as far as a timeline that we're looking at with these options?
August 13th. By the next virtual presentation, I need to have all the information together to know whether or not this is a viable option in order to plan for it, in order to also make sure that parents know that if it's not a viable option, that I will be recommending the current model to the board. So we need to make that decision to give enough time for our parents, our students, the district, and the staff to ensure that we open safely. So that'll be by the next meeting, which is August 13th.
All right, how would the district pay for it? Wouldn't this require double the number of elementary teachers?
we would be, how would the district pay for it? At this point, Hudson Valley has been very generous and indicated that they feel it's important to work with us as a partner, and they would be providing the lease of the space for no cost, at least in our initial conversations. There may be some costs incurred by the district to move into the facility. There could be some potential cost depending on the review that is done of the facility to make the facility compliant with the same requirements that the school is responsible for. We don't know that as of yet. We've just had an initial conversation, and we know that they are reviewing existing space. So there could be a cost. That cost will be presented to the community and the board. We would be talking about moving the existing 5th grade teachers or 6th grade teachers or 4th grade teachers, depending on the grade level, out of their schools. And there are currently 14 5th grade classes, so we would need anywhere between 25 and 28 spaces, ideally. There is, that does not factor in the number of children at the 5th grade who may want full remote options. That would bring the number down. So we're anticipating that we would need between 22 and 25 spaces and 22 to 25 personnel to support the social distancing. No different than we would in the event that the grade level stayed within the school. So it's simply moving the program out, the grade level program out, to provide the extra classrooms for the K4 in the case if it was the 5th grade, for the K3 grade 5 in the case if it was the 4th grade. So it's approximately 22 to 25 classroom spaces and 22 to 25 staff members to cover those cohort groupings of students.
Okay, safety and security of children. If children were to go to another location, such as Hudson Valley Community College, what type of security supervision would be available?
Well, we would assign an administrator to oversee the program on site. We would look at the teaching and support staff that normally would be provided as a portion of 5th grade. So we would apportion staff accordingly by the number of students that are there. Would be approximately 300 students. In the event that we reviewed the area of the campus, we would want to make sure that the bus drop-off could be done safely and adjacent to the building, so that there wasn't a long period of time in which students would have to transition across the campus. And in the event that we needed a security supervisor, we would hire personnel to be able to provide that.
Why can't the schools get temporary trailers to increase capacity?
We would need approximately 22 to 25 modular classrooms. It's the same number of classrooms that we need to move a grade level out. Those classrooms are in need of installations and approval of SED. Based on my past experience, that number of modular classrooms could be in the range of $1 million of unaidable expense. And we would not necessarily be able to get those installed and reviewed and approved in time, and it's quite a costly option.
All right. How would start and end times change?
We don't know that specifically yet. We would anticipate that the bus run would have to be a district-wide bus run to pick up all the 5th graders from 5 different catchment areas or attendance zones. We would imagine that the start time for hypothetically a 5th grade or a 6th grade school would need to be either 40 minutes before or 40 minutes after the start time for the K4. That is only based on some of the work that we did through the high school start time. You need about 30 to 40 minutes between bus tiers. So we could anticipate a 4th bus tier in order to accomplish that, but I'm not certain of that at this time. We'd have to look at the number of parents that would drop their kids off and the number of kids that would need to be picked up and make that determination. But I would imagine that that start time and end time would not be able to be the same as the K-4 schools in the event that it was a fifth grade location. It would vary, it could vary by 30 to 40 minutes.
All right. Should we do one or two more with this and then move to our fourth thought exchange?
Yes.
Okay. How will lunch be handled in the new location?
Well, the nice thing about Hudson Valley is they have area where they can serve lunch and kids can be socially distanced. We haven't made this determination yet, but Hudson Valley would be willing to provide through their cafeteria, Mazone cafeteria services, lunch and breakfast for the kids. We would pay for that, but that would be the only cost that they've indicated because that's a private vendor. But we would be serving lunch there no different than we would at Belltop School or Red Mill School or Janae or EPS or Janae. Green Meadow.
Okay, we have had a few questions on the full remote option. Can we opt into full remote learning in the case that students will be moved to alternate schools? And I think some things that we saw here earlier that didn't get to, would families be able to at some point bring their students back in, and what kind of timeline and commitments would that look like?
Oh, just the timeline question. Okay, we want to be able to welcome kids back in person. And we understand all the considerations involved for our families who've requested full-time remote options. But we need to be able to prepare for the reentry of students to make sure that we have sufficient space within our classrooms, and we have to be able to accommodate those changes fluidly. So we are looking at an idea of, if a family requests remote learning, that it would not be for a 10-week period. We would evaluate those requests and students would be able to be reassigned to in-person on a 10-week basis. That would give us the ability to have stable cohorts and stable instruction for our in-person learning and stable cohorts of instruction for our remote instruction program. So it'd be about a 10-week period. Would parents have the option, should we have to relocate students to another site? We would hope that parents would first come and visit the site, talk to the administration about how the program would be set up. In the event that the parent wanted a remote option, we would certainly consider it, as we are required by policy and state guidance.
All right, let's go to our last thought exchange, which is related to health and safety measures. All right, so once again, tejoin.com, and then there's this 9-digit code that you would enter. What are your thoughts, questions, and concerns about the health and safety measures proposed to be implemented in all schools K-12? Since we're running low on time, we'll set the timer at 1:30. Please submit your questions or comments, and then remember to rate the other thoughts that you see on your screen. All right, once again, the timer is out, but you can continue to enter your thoughts, questions, or comments. Will there be recess for elementary kids? How will this work?
Okay, we haven't got Mr. Mahar and Mrs. Squatchy in here yet, and they're our guest panel members. So let's see if we can get Mrs. Squatchy and Mr. Mahar to address this question regarding one of my favorite topics, which is recess. Mrs. Squatchy.
Hi, Mr. Simons. Thank you. Absolutely, the kids flourish with recess, and we're looking forward to welcoming them back this year and providing recess for them. We have had our health and safety supervisor from Questar 3 BOCES talk in great detail with us about recess, and we have found that kids are still allowed to play on our recess equipment, but we've talked about as a K-5 team making a schedule for that so that we keep cohort groups down to a minimum on the recess equipment. And of course, they'll be practicing all of the safety guidelines of washing their hands before and after recess and using hand sanitizer. But they will have recess, and it's our anticipation that they'll be wearing their masks during recess as well.
Thank you, Mrs. Squatchy. Mr. Mahar, anything to add?
I just want to add that some of my staff had asked if they could have their classes outside to get more fresh air and keep kids, further than the 6 feet apart. And I said during good weather, that would be something that we would consider. So we have, even our staff are thinking of ideas for students to get some fresh air and some recess.
Thank you both very much. Thank you, Mr. Mahar. Thank you, Mrs. Squatchy. Let's take another question, Mr. Adam.
All right, face masks. We've seen a few comments and questions about this. Will there be consequences for students who do not fully comply with using their face masks? And then I saw a similar question about with younger students, would they also need to be wearing them, and how could we ensure that they do wear face masks?
Overall, there will be consequences if there are repeated issues with students not wearing their masks. Our teachers know kids very well. Our high school teachers know high school kids. Our middle school teachers are very in tune with the actions and some of the issues with our great middle school kids, and our elementary teachers are very gifted at figuring out how to do reminders and reinforcers for the kids. So there will be consequences overall if there are repeated issues that are more of a compliance issue. Hypothetically, a high school student who simply refuses to wear their mask. We are reviewing the code of conduct to make sure that our staff understands how some of the procedures relate to various infractions that are already in the code of conduct. If you're told by a staff member to put your mask on and you don't, that's an insubordination issue and a failure to follow directions. At the elementary school level, it is a little different. We have elementary teachers, for example, at the first grade, who know how to reinforce through fun ways to have the kids wearing their masks and to make sure that there are gentle reminders in some cases. But if it is a situation, it could range from a verbal reminder to a more significant consequence depending on the level and frequency by which the student is simply not complying with the mask rule.
How often are buildings
and any other rule?
Sorry. How often are buildings and classrooms getting deep cleaning?
Okay, we've been advised that the thorough cleaning and disinfecting guidelines, we've trained our custodians and staff in making sure that they're aware of those guidelines. Those classroom and school areas that are required to be cleaned daily will be cleaned daily. And those areas that are listed in the CDC guidelines and the State Department of Health that need to be disinfected daily will be disinfected daily. Most of that disinfecting will occur in the evenings, and that is why we're reviewing and increasing our staffing in the evenings. We are also looking into contracted services to do some of the disinfecting to help our custodial staff with those enormous tasks. But it'll be done daily and it'll be done in the evenings.
All right, we are at 8 o'clock. Mr. Simons, would you like to do one or two more encore questions here?
Sure.
All right. What is the deciding factor to remove students from the classroom should COVID cases rise in the community?
Well, currently the governor has set the standard for opening the schools, which is an average of 5% or greater infection rate. And at this point, we're nowhere near that. And to close the schools, I believe it is in the neighborhood of a 9% infection rate over a 14-day period. So the indicators of COVID-19 cases in the capital region, not just Rensselaer County, would be the determining factors to open our schools and close our schools. There could be a case of COVID-19 within a building that would require us, under direction of the Department of Health, to shift the entire building to remote learning, but there is no, to quote the Department of Health today, there is no black and white manual to describe when that would happen. It will come as a result of the contact tracing efforts of the Rensselaer County Department of Health.
All right. How are you going to communicate to parents in the event of a COVID case or procedures for closure? How would you reopen as well?
First thing we will do is we will talk to the Department of Health. We will find out what they would like us to do. And then we will coordinate our communication with the Department of Health so that we make sure that we are getting that out accurately and timely. And we would expect to communicate as we do now. I think we communicate fairly frequently with our parents, and we'll let you know what's going on. It will likely occur from the school level. If it is one school, it would come likely through the school messenger system, which is an efficient way to deliver information quickly to all of our parents and affected staff. And we would put that information up on our website and our social media. And we will also have contact information included in the event that somebody wanted to call and had a specific question. And all those protocols will be publicized once we've had the appropriate meetings with the Department of Health over the next few weeks.
All right, one more question, Mr. Simons. Schools can't get enough tissues. How will you secure enough cleaning supplies? I guess we could include PPE and other things of that nature.
That is a great question. We are receiving from vendors multiple emails every day regarding PPE and other cleaning supplies that might be available. We are ordering as much as we can right now independently as a district in direct purchasing from vendors. We also received from the Assistant Commissioner of Education back in July a information sheet asking us how many masks, cleaning materials, gloves, other PPE and supplies we would need based on a student count. We provided that information to the state, and the state is working, as I understand it, with the New York State Office of General Services to make that those materials and supplies and equipment available through state contract purchase. We are concerned that it arrive in a timely manner. We did start ordering stuff back in the spring as we were bringing some of our essential workers back. And we are spending significant budget numbers on these materials that are required. So whether or not it will all come in, we hope it will. We're staying on top of it through our business office and in coordination with BOCES and the county. We're going to have to do what we can to get everything in place to ensure that we have adequate supplies.
All right, Mr. Simon, would you like to close out tonight's public forum?
First, I'd like to thank the exceptional panel that we had this evening for joining us. Our administrators are working daily, including in the weekends. in trying to put together the reopening plan. So I want to thank the panel. I want to thank Mr. Adam for doing an excellent job with Thought Exchange. This is a new tool that we have as a district, and we're working that independently through Mr. Adam. And I want to thank Mr. Goodwin for setting this up, because it's a good opportunity for us to engage in our public when we can't all be together in an auditorium. So thanks everybody on our team for doing this. And I want to extend my thanks to the parents and the staff members that have joined us for this meeting. I have to be honest that this is a difficult task. This is not an easy thing to do, to reopen our schools under these circumstances. And we are doing what we can to make sure that we do it thoughtfully, that we do it safely, and we do it in a way that engages everybody. As we learn more, we will answer the questions that we have not been able to answer yet. But one thing I know for sure is that we do need to pull together as a community and as a school district to make this happen. There are a range of concerns, there are a range of considerations ranging from a child's health, to a family member's health, to a staff member's health. And we have to be able to address those concerns to the best of our ability. There are concerns about educational quality and educational equity. We need to be able to make sure that the kindergarten students that are entering into our classrooms this year under extraordinary circumstances, that we can nurture them, that we can care for them, and we can provide as much as we can to help them feel welcome and safe, no different than we would under any other circumstances. We have to be able to be responsive to the issues as they arise, and we have to do it together as a community. This is a difficult thing to do under extraordinary circumstances, and at any time, our district could be forced to close again, to shift to remote learning. And so we can't just think about September. We have to think about what might happen in the winter, and we have to think about the real possibility as we put forth a program that we could have periods of time during this year in which our students are all on remote learning. How do we put their kids, how do we put our community, and how do we put our staff in the best position to respond to that so that we have educational quality, safety, and equity for everybody? So we recognize at the end of the day, on August 19th, when I proposed the plan to the board, that not everybody will be fully happy with it. I can tell you, however, that we are sincerely working on trying to address the concerns that have come forward thus far in our district. But again, we all need to pitch in. We all need to work for solutions, and we all need to work together as the great East Greenbush educational community to make sure that this reopening is as safe and offers as much educational quality as we can for all of our kids. Appreciate everybody's participation and hope everybody has a safe evening. Thank you.